Today, we are going to examine the relationship between the efficient market hypothesis, EMH, and creative destruction, which is the process through which innovation transforms the economy. It is the subject of the Nobel Prize in Economics this year. So I thought it was very interesting to tie it in with what we did in the course. Today, I'm going to look at the history, the significance, and some of the papers I read, and the way in which contemporary shocks, like shocking shocks from technology innovation, such as artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, undermine market efficiency, and I was wondering if it affects inflation and what that relationship is. So there was an individual named Joseph Schumpeter who in the 1930s talked about how capitalism develops with waves of innovation developing and kind of spawning this new economic growth, but it also destroys old industries and old technologies. He coined the term creative destruction. This was later formalized by the Nobel Prize winners Aghion and Howitt in their endogenous growth model, which demonstrated how innovation replaces older technologies to propel long-term growth. The 2025 Nobel Prize paper, which was my assignment number one, gave the idea recognition. So there was some research by Van Reenen who talked about how policy and competition affect this dynamic. But I was really interested in how tying in Eugene Fama, who wrote about EMH, efficient market hypothesis, and the prices that take into account all the information, just like what we talked about in the class with the informed investor versus the liquid investor. The efficiency requires the markets to swiftly price both the productivity shifts and the projections of the future gains in when there is this new innovation, disruptive technology. However, this is complicated by that creative destruction because the companies spend a lot of money on all this new technology, but the older technology it kind of grinds into the ground. Learning about these frictions, uneven adoption or diminished returns, they used to call it, their uncertainty about new technologies, and these elements lead to transient inefficiencies. Prices change over time. So I wanted to talk about competitiveness and living standards, how they're fueled by creative destruction, and something like the medical term sclerosis came out in my reading, which results in reallocation slowing down when institutions fail, such as during crisis or news factors or microeconomic outcomes that depend on expectations, such as growth and inflation. They're also impacted by new innovations because innovations frequently occur in spurts at a corporate level, and they result with the volatility and mispricing. It's very difficult to price things. So we wanted to look at, I wanted to look at inflation and crypto, but inflation was dependent on the expectations, and inflation increased instantly if productivity gains were anticipated by technology, and otherwise the adoption of the technology kind of became against inflation. Prices should immediately reflect the expectations according to EMH, but in the curve which I drew in practice, the policy and learning about the technology leads to delays, and it makes it very difficult to be predictable. So I tried to like look at EMH and by putting inflation, and I put it to the test with cryptocurrency with Bitcoin price. Why? Because there's a semi-strong efficiency, which is challenged by limited kind of information, not real data, and there's an asymmetry. Plus, there's a bias from the news, etc. With deep equity markets, cryptocurrency liquidity is not good, is not high. It's thin and dispersed, which increases the volatility and slows the price adjustments to react. So it's not efficient market. Prices are more influenced by the feelings and sentiment and belief that it's going to recover, social media, news, and more than the actual fundamentals of an investment. So there are regulatory shocks, and there is news which changes the sentiment. There's also something that I found called macro linkages, which is an industry, research that talks about how if you buy more cryptocurrency, then the inflationary expectations rise because you feel like it's going to make you very rich, or it's going to, go 10,000 times what you bought it for. So in summary, the cryptocurrency markets and AI, et cetera, a cryptocurrency has time varying efficiency. And they're closer to the EMH when there's regulation and liquidity is stable. But they're really away from that when there's news or war or bad news, um, things like that. So I felt that I still want to do more research and talk about this, but I felt that the EMH is under the pressure from creative destruction. This is a complicated topic. I think that it should be reacted by efficient markets, and that reallocation and open policy contribute to pricing reflecting reality more quickly. But leaders can invest in flexibility and keep an eye on the expectations because they're priced growth drivers and they're not really the real story. So my my hypothesis, I'm still working on it. That's where I am now. But my biggest challenge was to simplify the Nobel research and kind of bring it all into a way that I could talk about it, and connecting its practical applications like artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency and the things that are happening now, and demonstrating the importance of liquidity and expectations for efficiency. That was probably the most challenging. Sorry for using slides. I noticed that we weren't supposed to use slides, and this was the only way that I could record my assignment number 2, and I'd already done the slides, so I thought I'd throw it in there. Thank you very much.